Jimmy Fallon gets caught in a blackface controversy from 20 years back that has the leftist liberal tweens on Twitter calling for his cancellation. But in this video, I'm going to show you how in trying to cancel everyone else, all cancel culture is doing is guaranteeing its own cancellation. You're going to absolutely love it. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Awesome to be with you as always. If this is your first time here on this channel, we post 2 videos a day analyzing current events, analyze some super awesome conservative trends so you can live in the present in light of even better things to come. So if you haven't already done so, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. It'd be an absolute privilege to have you as a regular part of this channel where each and every day we get to celebrate together the inevitable collapse of left-wing globalism and the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. So let's begin with our video chat question of the day. Do you think leftist tweens will get Jimmy Fallon canceled? Let us know in the comments section below. Do you think the virtue signaling of the Twitter left will be successful in their calls for Fallon to be fired? Because really, I think the irony in all of this is that cancel culture may end up being the real victim here. I think we're seeing more and more people calling for the cancellation not of Jimmy Fallon, but of cancel culture itself. But before we do anything else, make sure to click on the link below and head on over to my special website from My Patriot Food Supply. With all the horrible quarantines that have been enforced already, with all the pictures of the empty shelves that we're seeing, or you may have seen them firsthand as a result of this coronavirus, it's such a relief to know that we have such good friends over at My Patriot Food Supply. Gang, they're simply the best. And there's frankly never been a better time to stock up on an emergency food supply, and no one makes that more ridiculously easy and affordable as My Patriot Supply. Their food kits last up to 25 years in storage. They include breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. And best of all, they have a guarantee policy that will knock your socks off. And if you act now, you can save $100 off a full 4-week emergency food supply when you click on the link below to go to my special website. You heard that right. It's $100 off. So don't wait. Click on that link below. Save $100 off your very own 4-week emergency food supply today. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. Tonight show host Jimmy Fallon woke up this morning only to find himself the latest victim of the woke police. A video from the year 2000, yes, you heard that right, a video from 20 years ago has resurfaced featuring Fallon in blackface as part of a sketch on Saturday Night Live. The video of Fallon, who was apparently impersonating Chris Rock, was featured on a tweet with the hashtag Jimmy Fallon is over party, and the caption underneath the video reads, NBC fired Megyn Kelly for mentioning blackface. Jimmy Fallon performed on NBC in blackface. And so, true to form, as predicted, there were immediate and hysterical calls for Fallon to be canceled throughout the Twitter echo chamber, where he's now being openly called a racist and a bigot for the skit. On the original tweet, it said this: every day it's someone new being canceled, but I think this time it's deserved. Blackface is horrible, unfunny, incredibly racist. I wonder what he has to say about this. Hashtag Jimmy Fallon is over. I'm sorry, that's somebody responding to the original tweet. Now, a number of tweets, thankfully, have expressed disillusionment and outrage over the tweens on Twitter and their ridiculous virtue signaling. A rather astute observer of the hypocrisy among the cancel culture left tweeted out, so Jimmy Fallon is canceled for this, but Justin Trudeau does it dozens of times throughout his youth, and he's still reelected as prime minister. I don't understand this planet. Now, just to be clear, Jimmy Fallon has not been canceled or fired from The Tonight Show, not at least yet. But I don't know if the same thing could be said of cancel culture itself. I think another fellow spoke on behalf of all of us when he tweeted out, at this point, cancel culture might need to be canceled. Get rid of the might. That observation, I think, is key because I think that's precisely what is going on here. I think that's precisely what's happening, and the left-wing proponents of cancel culture are oblivious to it. They are completely oblivious to the myriad of ways in which they're destroying themselves, destroying their very own lunatic leftist culture that they're supposedly such woke warriors defending. And what we have to understand is that there are several dynamics that I think are working together to destroy the left. Several dynamics that are converging to cause the left to commit suicide here. The pressure that proponents of grievance politics and identity politics are under to prove that America's racist is enormous. Scholars like Ellie Steele argue that this pressure actually came as a result of the election of Barack Obama, not because of Obama per se, although he was thoroughly cultural Marxist, but more from the fact that with his win, there were many who believed that America had finally achieved what they were calling a post-racial society. I mean, after all, if you think it through, Obama was part white, part black, and so for many, he became the symbol of our nation sort of coming together to racially heal, finally, once and for all. And so what we have to understand here is that no one was more threatened by this notion of a post-racial society than members of the identity politics establishment, those who were getting rich off of pushing grievance politics like Al Sharpton, right, the Southern Poverty Law Center. They were actually threatened by this notion that we can all now move on from our supposed racist past and the like. And so what advocates of cultural Marxist grievance politics had to do was they had to go about proving each and every day that America was still radically racist. And so Ellie Steele reminds us of the whole fiasco surrounding the 2012 killing of Trayvon Martin. If you recall, Martin was a black kid shot and killed by a fellow by the name of George Zimmerman, who was himself part white and part Peruvian. Now, in the normal course of identity politics, he'd be checking off the Hispanic box when applying for college, for instance. But this got turned on its head when Zimmerman became the oppressor, when he became the shooter. And so in an attempt, a deliberate attempt by the corporatist globalist media to push a cultural Marxist grievance politics paradigm, they recast Zimmerman, do you remember this, as a white Hispanic. That was the term they used over and over and over again. They actually made up a term for him. They called him white Hispanic. It was a clear case of pushing a white on black crime narrative by the mainstream Marxist media. So the point here is that the left is under extreme pressure to try to find examples of racism everywhere they can and even invent them, like with Zimmerman, or most recently with the Covington High School kids at the March for Life in D.C. last year. They have to find or invent as much racism as they can in order to justify the continuation of the cultural Marxist grievance politics that's making them rich. And this is getting harder and harder because studies show that overt racism has been on a steady decline over the last 40 years. For example, the majority of people surveyed 40 years ago on interracial marriage were opposed to it. Today, the vast majority of people surveyed are all for it. 40 years ago, a majority didn't want to live next door to someone of a different ethnicity. Today, a supermajority have no problem with doing that. So study after study shows that we're actually becoming less racist, not more. And so what's going on here is that this pressure among leftists to find and point to examples of racism has created an online culture of what many are calling outrage porn or manufactured outrage. Angela Nagel and her wonderful study, Kill All Normies, it's great. It's on how the nationalist right actually won the online culture wars back in 2016. But what she observed was how social media sites like Tumblr end up becoming platforms for what she called a kind of cult of suffering and the incessant practice of cry bullying, where every hint of privilege or insensitivity or bias was suddenly manipulated into legitimate objects of shame and scorn. And inevitably, such shame and scorn knows no boundaries and begins to turn on itself, which causes it inevitably to implode, to self-destruct. Do you remember the whole fiasco surrounding the New York Times some months back? We did a video on it. There was a hashtag cancel New York Times that was trending on Twitter. And it was right after the El Paso, Texas and Dayton, Ohio shootings. And the New York Times led their first edition featuring President Trump's comments on the shootings with the headline, Trump urges unity versus racism. Simple enough, right? Trump urges unity versus racism. That was enough to trigger all the cancel culture social justice warriors to demand their fellow lefties cancel their subscriptions to the New York Times. One person tweeted out, Are you effing kidding me? At New York Times, Trump urges unity versus racism is an utterly absurd characterization of how Trump has addressed the mass shootings fueled by his unabashed white supremacy and his party's opposition to gun control. Now, do you see the manufactured outrage there? It's very similar to what we've been seeing with regard to left-wing campuses and the Black Lives Matters movement, or the start of the walk away movement, the walk away from Democrats movement. We're finding more and more examples of left-wing liberals actually shooting themselves in the foot because of their virtue signaling, their manufactured outrage. It knows no boundaries, and therefore it inevitably begins to turn on itself. You know the old saying, never interfere when your enemy is in the process of destroying himself. Well, as it turns out, it's becoming more and more apparent every day that there is no greater epitome of that saying than left-wing liberalism. So the irony is that in their incessant calling for the cancellation of others, leftist liberals are only ultimately canceling themselves. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my video I just uploaded on Joe Biden's "You Ain't Black" disaster. What we're finding is that more and more blacks are openly leaving the Democratic Party like never before. It's going to absolutely make your day. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.